Welcome to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism in Modern Life, hosted by Adam Piercy and Mick Mulroy. Welcome back to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism. I'm your host, Adam Piercy, here with my co-host, Mick Mulroy. Mick, let's start off today by me asking you, how's it going this week?
So this week, very busy. We got the war still going on in Iran, of course. So as a national security analyst, I spend a lot of time on that. And Lobo Institute, of course, is the company I'm part of. And it is very, very, very busy. We do multiple things. For folks that might not know, we do humanitarian aid delivery around the world. That's never something that unfortunately eases up, but there is far less money going into that from countries around the world, including my own. We also do tactical training, and we do media and a security summit here in Whitefish Security Summit. And we were just talking about it before we started. We do have a space section, so I think I'll get my Pub and Porch partner down here to participate in that. That'd be awesome. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing down here in Montana. How's things going up for you in Canada? What is new with your life?
Well, the big thing happening up here is that spring is starting to spring. We don't have any snow in the GTA anymore, which is good in Ontario where I live. That's nice. We're also, I know it's very green where you are. It's just starting to get green here. We're actually waiting on the cherry blossoms to bloom here, which is not exactly the same time as it would happen in Japan. So we have a very famous grove of cherry blossoms in a place called High Park. There's like 7 of them, but they were gifted to the city of Toronto by the Japanese ambassador sometime in the 50s, I think. And so that's a big thing that's going to be happening here soon. But also, for me, and this is a topic I wanted to focus on today, was there's a lot of change in the air for me right now. There's been a change in my job. I've taken on a new position, which is definitely a positive step up for me, but also comes with a lot of change. And also, as we were talking about recently with relationships, I've had a change with that in the last few months as well. And so, there's lots going on. And one thing that I try to rely on regularly is my practice, frankly, you and I have said this to each other before. This podcast, in a way, is our own form of therapy, right? Because we talk through some of the things that are key on our minds. But yeah, there's been a lot of change for me. And so much of it is positive, but also much of it is I would say, let's say non-negative, but not positive either. So you kind of have to think about it from that perspective. So I wanted to talk about change today because especially with the pace of everything today, especially for those of us who are in the private sector, who are dealing with things that are as immense as some of the things that you and I do, change can happen in an hour, in a day. And good example is the space program. They've recently pivoted themselves towards moon landings away from the original planned programs, and there's a big change there too. So I would like to see if I could bounce it back to you quickly, Mick, to sort of say, change. What does change mean to you as a Stoic, as a person who sometimes has to operate with this, short notice, big difference changes?
Yeah, and this is a big part of the Stoicism philosophy, right? So accepting what you can't change, which sometimes is change, right? Life happens, changes happen. They're inevitable. There's really nothing you can do about it in some cases. Dealing with what you can affect. And essentially standing back up every time you get knocked down. Because most people talk about change in the sense of, negative, right?
Yeah.
Good change, you generally don't have to have a group huddle about, right? like, hey, I just walked down the street and found $100 bill. That's not like a big discussion, other than you should probably find out if somebody dropped the $100 bill if you're a Stoic, right? And give it back to
Yeah.
them. You get my point. So it is dealing with negative change. And I actually, in preparing for this, even though I wasn't doing this, I read this one, it was a LinkedIn post. He said it publicly, so I don't think he'd mind if I read it because it's impressive to me. His name's Alex Willard. So lessons from 20 years in the Army. Getting fired from the best job of my career was the best thing that ever happened to me. 6 years into my Army career, I got fired. Not for anything illegal, unethical, or immoral. I just wasn't a very good infantry officer. I didn't like yelling at people. I wasn't great leading 150 soldiers spread across miles of mountains and woods. And honestly, it wasn't very engaging to me. So my brigadier commander relieved me of command. Everything I'd worked toward led to that moment. The infantry officer course, airborne school, ranger school, Iraq, all to get a company command in the 101st Airborne Division, the Band of Brothers unit. Gone. I cried. I went on long runs trying to get the anger out. I was heartbroken, embarrassed, angry, sad, and completely unsure of what came next. It was an intense hurricane of emotions I felt. And then slowly something else happened. Being fired forced me to look at myself honestly, maybe for the first time. I hadn't been trying hard enough, and the infantry just wasn't for me. I found a different path, an army strategist, a specialty I didn't even know existed. I graduated from its course at the Army War College and started all over. The next 14 years have been the best of my professional career. I couldn't see any of that from the floor of that moment. It's almost impossible to see where life is going looking forward. It's always clear looking backwards. And then he thanks his wife, Ashley, for being there the whole way. So it's got, a lot of really, and I think rightfully positive comments for several
Yeah.
reasons. Right.
Sure.
And, it hits close to home. I was an infantry officer. My son is an infantry officer in the 101st Airborne Division. Right. But it's really not about the career or what he was doing.
Right.
It's not, I'm just saying, it got my attention because of that. It's because of the just utter honesty,
Yeah.
right? Most people, to be frank, would simply try to hide it and say, oh, I didn't want to do it. I wasn't fired. It just wasn't for me, whatever.
Yeah.
He was here in a public post. He was honest about, and he didn't even argue with the battalion commander that fired him.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't make excuses. He accepted it. Former
Absolutely.
airborne ranger talking about crying and going on runs. It's just brutal. It's really honest,
Yeah.
right? And I think so. Why am I bringing it up? I think that level of honesty when something hits you in life, and there's a good chance that somewhere in your life you're going to be told you're not good enough. You're going to be told you're fired. You're going to be
Yeah.
told, I don't want to be friends with you. I don't want to be your girlfriend. I don't want to be your boyfriend. There's stuff that's going to happen. And I think one of the best ways to deal with it up front is honesty,
Yeah.
not just with everybody else, but with yourself. Because most people put up a wall, they blame it on other people, they deny it happened, or they say it was wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But to be honest with yourself, like this person, Alex was, is the first step. So you do a full honest assessment. Was it me? If you really believe it wasn't, okay, that's your lesson. If it was, okay, what am I going to do to change?
Yeah.
And that's the resilience for change
Yeah.
because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to be told you can't do something. You could be
Yeah.
trying out for the astronaut program. You could have been, uh, a grade A student, a superstar track athlete. You
Yeah.
went in the Air Force, and then something happens medically, and they screen you and say, "Hey, man, you can't be an astronaut. There's something wrong with your heart."
Right.
Right?
I know.
You have to have that resilience, which I do think Stoicism helps provide people
Yeah.
because you talk about it before it actually happens. You talk about your worth not being attached to any kind of material things, which includes the job status you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you accept, the old Rocky Balboa statement. It's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up. And there's some version of that throughout history. Look at Winston Churchill. Look how many times he failed
Yeah.
and got back up, and he now is probably one of the most significant leaders in world history, or viewed that way, and rightfully so. Right? So,
Yeah.
for the folks out there, especially young folks, and I hope we do have a lot of young folks that listen to us, it's going to happen. The first thing you do is take an honest assessment, and then you stand the fuck back up,
Yeah.
and then you drive on. That's what Stoicism, I think, is ultimately about when it comes to this area. And you persevere. You persevere.
Yeah.
And you'll look back, and maybe one day when you look back, you can post something like that. And I'm telling you, like that post has the most positive feedback of a post that I've seen in a long time. And a lot of it's about just the brutal honesty of the person who posted it. So that
Absolutely.
would be my main takeaway from reading that, and my main point when it comes to change in your life. That's negative. If it's positive, I'm not going to do an episode on it, right? Just be happy, accept it, move on.
Yeah. So I think for me, right, and I wasn't fired or anything like that. I made a choice, and I'm making a choice for myself. But
Yes, I didn't mean to imply you were.
oh, no,
You're
no,
right.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. But I think there's a story. I want to tell a quick story here, right? And it's but it ties into what you're saying, because I think the brutal honesty that we have to accept with a lot of this stuff too is much of it is objectively has no value. And I'll quickly talk about what I mean for that, right? So a few years ago I think it was 2019. I had been laid off with a bunch of other middle managers at a company that I'd been at for about 6 months. And I was kind of devastated because I'd gone through 2 layoffs in a year because of just the nature of the job market at the time and the tech sector at the time. And Donald Robertson was going to Austria to go to Carnuntum to visit the rebuilt Roman quarter with the baths and everything in Carnuntum. It's actually called Petronell Carnuntum because it had a different name in Austria for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald was going, and I said, "Well, look, if I'm still jobless, I'll be your cameraman." And he took me up on that offer, and so we flew to Austria. Well, I met him there because he was in Greece at the time, I think, or God only knows where. And Donald and I shot all the video promos and did all the interviews with the locals, and we had hundreds of hours of footage. I did all the editing for those videos and everything. But Donald, he kept saying this to me when we were in Austria, because I was kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen when I get back, and I'm not sure about this or that or the next thing. And Donald kept quoting this Marcus Aurelius quote, which was, "The universe is change, life is opinion." And he kept saying that sort of over and over again every day to me as we would talk about this stuff. Because especially when you're shooting B-roll, so B-roll is like where there's nobody in the shot. It's just like, panning shots of a
Mm-hmm.
vista or like of the rebuilt town or whatever. You're just kind of standing around while the camera is kind of doing its thing, right? And I've always kind of taken that into account for here. So it's interesting because and I don't fault you for doing this, you're using a lot of like positive change and negative change, but the way I think Donald and Marcus would say is that it's just change, and we get to pick whether or not it's positive or negative. We get to pick how we feel about it, right? And I think actually, and this is why I agree with you on the resilience side, I think that's part of the resilience story that we talk about. Because if we know that change is up to us, what its effect will feel like, positive or negative or neutral, then I feel like that gives us a lot of power in this resilience story that we're trying to write for ourselves as we do all of this going forward. And I'll say one last thing. I have always had this mindset too about like, so here's how I think about it. If things can only be positive or negative, then everything's a 50-50 shot. But what I like to say is, some stuff doesn't have any positive or negative value. Some stuff just is objectively neutral, and it is just objectively neutral. So what I have tried to do in my life around change is say, all I want is a non-negative scenario. I just want it to be at least neutral or better. And if I do that, then that gives me math 66% of a chance of it being not negative. And I feel like that's pretty handy math when I think about it, because that allows me to look at any situation and say, wow, that's really tough. But, I'm the one who gets to choose whether or not it's crappy tough or okay tough. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of the resilience story that we're talking about here in some ways.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a lot of it's your perception, right?
Yeah.
And change just happens and you perceive it as negative, neutral, or positive, right? So
Yeah.
the other point that I've seen is so change happens, even if it's negative, even if it's objectively negative. Like if you polled 10 people and said, yeah, that's pretty negative. Um, Once you've made the assessment, can you correct something? Can you do something? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. I would purport that the best thing is to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is I've seen people that had, and a lot of this in the professional sphere, and maybe it's men tend to focus a lot more on their professional stuff, as if it's their core to their being. Maybe it's just, culture, etc. Well, I've seen people who, had a negative experience when they left a job, even though they did great things in their job and they did, super important things, but they had a negative experience at the end, out the door, going out the door, and they
Yeah.
just constantly focus on that. And it's not only uh, self harm in the sense that you've just turned your whole career into something that you're focused on the negative because of the. And again, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I know you started with leaving. You're moving on to another job.
Yeah.
But on the professional side, then we should talk some on the personal side. But the professional side, like I would advocate that you try to look at whatever it is the issue is in its entirety and focus on the positive for several reasons. One, you can't change the past, right? So what happened? Like you had a bad experience on the way out, but that doesn't help you to just ruminate on that for the rest of your life. Focus on the positive, and the negative stuff, just chuck it to the side, man. Life's too short to be focused on, some
Yeah.
personality you didn't like or slighted or what have you, because it doesn't do you any good. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. Um, and it's too many people have that. Too many people, I think, they've just focused on the negative and they don't realize uh, how harmful it is to them personally because they have a vendetta against a person or somebody like that. And
Yeah.
that's, you know, life's too short for that. And you have to focus on how you can improve yourself. And you're never going to improve yourself by, constantly
Yeah.
fretting
Totally.
over that. And it's and most people who say that objectively, like you're not talking about a person, like I'm not. I mean, I'm thinking about other people that I'm talking about, but you get
Sure.
my point. Like they'll go,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, man, you're right. And then like nine out of 10 of them are still bitching about something that happened years ago, and you're like,
Yeah.
dude, like,
Yeah.
don't you get my point? And they're like, oh yeah, no, but yeah, I guess I should move on. It's like, yeah, it's not, you're not, it's only helping you to move on, right?
Yeah.
So practice what you preach.
Yeah.
I'm
But
talking to people like
also remember that the practice is an act, right? And that's something that you were highlighting at the beginning of, like in the early part of our conversation today, where like so much of this is really choice.
yep,
Like it's always funny to me because once I started realizing that so many people out there, change will occur and they'll be like, oh, well, that guy's making me whatever, or this person's making me blah, 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 or this thing happened and it's making me blah, blah, blah. But the reality is like, to some level it's a choice, right? To let those things affect you that way, to make them take over your mind, like you've said, and continually go back and complain and complain and complain, right? And I think, we always have this ability to have this action that we can take, which is to say, okay, it's over, moving on, or whatever it needs to take. Like if you need to do a retrospective on it and learn about it enough so that you can make an informed decision for your future, I'm okay with that. But ultimately, ruminating on it forever is, I agree with you completely. It's counterproductive. Sorry, it's counterproductive, and honestly, it's putting you in a position where you're missing out something that's coming already. I was writing in my journal earlier this week about change, and I was writing, and I was talking about the difference between yesterday, tomorrow, and today. Right? Yesterday is over. I can't change that. Tomorrow hasn't come yet. I can have an effect on that. But the thing I can actually do is make a choice today to do something. And I feel like change kind of leans into that. When change occurs, you have a choice. You can worry about the past, worry about the future, or you can do an act now, because now is the only time you can do something. And I think for me, that's a big thing I've been looking at with change, especially with this change that I have coming up for myself, because it will be a big step up and I'm going to have to up my game. But I can choose to freak out about it, or I can choose to say it's going to be hard. It's going to be different. I'm going to have all new people to meet and all new stuff to do, but I can still make a choice to do my best at it. And that's what I control.
Yep. Make your own
So,
luck. And luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So
yeah.
um, that's what I would recommend for people who are going into a big event. Preparation, preparation, preparation is the only thing you can
Yeah.
really do to make a difference. And
Totally.
while we're talking, vendettas are a big part of, I think, moving on from significant change. And I don't know why I just remembered it, but a friend of mine was really mad at another friend of mine. And, he said, oh, he's stubborn, he's bullheaded, you can't tell him what to do, he won't take no for an answer,
Yeah.
yada, yada. And he just went on and on and on. And my friend was famous and for self described famous for his vendettas, right? And it just so happened, it's a true story, that I kept trying to tell him, hey, move on. The guy, and this is true. I finally told my friend, so you say he's bullheaded, stubborn, never gives up. Yes. He goes, so this is the same guy that when you were in an ambush, scaled the cliff, climbed down a cliff behind you, and you thought you were a goner until you noticed that he just walked up next to you and was fighting the enemy, and you don't know even how he got there. And he's like, yes. It's like, you don't think that his stubbornness, his never take no for an answer, had anything to do with the fact that he climbed a cliff? I know this is a pretty dramatic example, right? And saved your life. Had anything to do with that? And he looked at me dead in the face and said, I hate you. And then he got up and went and apologized to the dude who was on the other side of the room. Right. So, I mean, not many people have that big of an example of like, and that is
Yeah.
actually a true story.
Well, but those tough
Where,
examples show us
but
a lot of truth, right? So,
yes. The point isn't just to tell a cool war story, my friend.
too
But it is a
cool.
pretty cool story, right? It
Yeah.
it is that, sometimes the attributes you don't like can be significant, um, and sometimes you should just get over it. Like, you shouldn't have
Yeah.
to say, "Well, the dude saved your life," so you kind of need to make up to him. It doesn't need to be that dramatic, right?
Right.
You're just going to disagree with some people, and if they're like a lifelong friend, just accept it, move on. Just don't bring it back up again. Just it's the part is accepting. I think change and adversity is not taking yourself too serious, right? You're going to have
Yeah.
arguments. Okay. If you dropped generally speaking, people who have arguments with you are your closer friends, because most people that aren't really friends with you and don't really
Yeah.
care enough to have an argument, right? They just
Yeah.
rather walk away. So I'd also look at potential adversity in life is not necessarily, especially when it comes to long-term relationships, something to take too serious. You can accept it and move on.
Yeah. I think you can. I think overall, though, we all have to get this universal thought through our minds that change is permanent, which sounds weird to people, but we are all changing. The common quote you hear, right, is "No man steps in the same river twice," and frankly, that is true. I think in our Western world, especially, right, I think we get so many chances in our lives where we find out that stuff kind of does stay the same a lot of the time. You still have a car, you still have a house, you still have a whatever. And so change feels so abrupt because it is changing at a pace that's not that common, around in other parts of the world. When we were all hunter gathering nomadic tribes people in 60,000 years ago, change was just as normal as it was that you might lose a family member, lose a friend, get attacked, walk into a saber-toothed den, whatever you've got, right? But nowadays I think we get this weird semblance of this idea that change doesn't really happen to us, right? It's like you get so many people where they stay in the job because they have I think you guys call it a 401k, like a
Yeah.
pension,
Yeah.
right?
It's kind of like your self-paid pension. The
Okay.
employees
Right.
match it.
It's
It's
like a
a
retirement
special
thing though, right?
tax shelter kind of thing.
Oh,
It's
right. But it's like they're like, I've got my 401k. In Canada, you might be like, well, we have an RSP plan, a registered retirement savings plan, or whatever.
yeah, same
And
thing.
right? And people stay in that. People stay in that because it's like it's steady and it's like it's never going to change. And then it does change, and everyone freaks out. But ultimately, everything's always changing, and there's so much change. Like I think this is a good time to bring out the old obstacle is the way quote, right? Because it's like, what stands in the way becomes the way. Well, if change is normal, then change is the way. Then there will always be change, and we should just accept it. And the thing we can control is how we react to change, what we do to make sure that change doesn't throw us completely out the window, right? Um, Anyways, that's my stance on it. It probably sounds quite harsh to a lot of people, but I think the thing is there are so many people where they're like, well, I mean, as I was saying before, like this program I was on in the space program, it's been around a long time, and then all of a sudden it was canceled, right? Or it's on pause, excuse me, is the official word. And they're going to do other stuff with it, but ultimately the way that it was is over. And so many people were like, it's been around for so long, how could they do that? It's the world, that's how it works, right? And what happens next is entirely up to you, and it's down to your choice and your actions. Anyways, rant over.
Yeah, but it's a big part of everybody's life, and how you deal with it is largely how you prepare to deal with it. So
Yeah,
these discussions, whether it's inside the Stoic kind of philosophy or just
yeah,
your own personal philosophy, I think is really important. It's really important for kids too. You think about, and a lot of this is, I'm sure, looking back at history, people would say we overstate dramatic changes. Um, I don't know, but I don't think that's the case where we're headed. I think we're going to see such dramatic changes with the technology we're developing now
yeah,
that it's going to be pretty close to as substantial as the experts are saying.
yeah,
I only say that because I just listen to the experts and
yeah,
just common sense, right? So we've created something that's going to surpass our intellect. I
yeah.
don't think that's ever happened, where a species creates something that's a superior intellect to itself.
No.
Um, and we're also creating its ability to function in the physical world, right? So
Hmm.
you connect the advancements in robotics to the advancements in artificial intelligence, general intelligence, eventually super intelligence. And it's
Hmm.
like science fiction's becoming science fact.
Yeah,
And I'm sure there's a lot of positives. I'm not the one that says it's going to end everything. And I don't know. So I don't know. I'm not going to be the one that gets on the podcast and says it one way or the other. But I do think it's fair to say it's going to cause a lot of change, right? I think we can all agree with that. And it's going to cause a lot of change to the younger generation, who's probably really wondering what they should be doing right now.
yeah,
Should they be going to college? If they are, what should they be studying? What's life going to be like for them? Are they going to have a job? Especially, I think it's probably the same in Canada, but in the U.S., you know, the unemployment rate for younger people keeps going up and up.
Yeah.
They're doing less good than their parents and grandparents did. That's a
Mm-hmm.
new thing. Used to be in the U.S., every generation did better than the other, and that was the idea. That was the whole concept. Like you want your children to do better than you did, and now it's
Yeah.
going the other direction. So this is an individual conversation for people, but it's also a very broad conversation because we're all heading into change. And
Yeah.
then, and, you know, in addition to what we're doing, there's also everything environmental that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're, you know, believe in, I don't really think you is something to believe in, but climate change is real. Climate change is real. I personally trust the scientists that we're having an impact on it. But even
Yeah.
if you don't, climate change has always happened on Earth, like dramatic climate changes.
Oh
So that's
yeah.
going to be right. So it's going to happen. It's not just because we happen to exist during a very short period of time
Right.
in the Earth's history. We tend to think this is the way it's always been, when it's clearly not the way it's always been.
Yeah.
Right? We've had, I know this is getting a big broad con. We've had like 11 major extinction events where
Yes.
a small fraction of the species on Earth made it through,
Right.
like in the single digits. I think that's how they define major extinction events, right? It's
Yeah.
going to happen again. Like, why would it stop?
Yeah.
So, um, the human being is going to have to accept change, like we all do. The human race is going to have to accept it and start planning for it.
Yeah.
So I know it's a bigger, but we could probably do a whole series on that, bring in experts. But it's true. Like we all know it's going to happen. We all know there's going to probably be a major ice age, a heating of the globe. You know, we're going to get hit with something from space. I mean, there's
Yeah.
all sorts of things that can happen, and maybe you know, if it's catastrophic enough, it's not going to matter. But
Yeah.
if it's not, then having that ability to adapt is what humans makes humans what we are, right?
Yeah.
What did Darwin say? It's not the strongest or the smartest; it's the one that can actually change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I think I'm paraphrasing it, but I think it's pretty much close to the exact quote. It's the
Yeah.
ability to adapt, which is the ability to change, right?
Totally.
So this is something that not only the individual needs to, I think, embrace uh, to do life the best way they can, but
Yeah.
also the whole species. Like, why aren't we preparing for it now? Why are we still
Yeah.
building houses that can't withstand 100-hour winds? Why are we still allowing people to build places that are clearly going to burn down the ground? Right?
Yeah.
Not picking on places that I'm just. Why
No,
aren't
but I
we
get it.
thinking about how we evolve, adapt to the changing circumstances that we either created or we didn't create?
Yeah. But there's something really important to talk about here too, which is the fact that, you know, very rarely do events happen that people don't really know about. Like certainly like when those mass extinction events like you were citing happened, those in many cases were surprises, right? Like the asteroid that took out the dinosaurs,
Yeah,
that was like a big deal. But
yeah.
nobody knew about that. But I would say for us, like I'll tell a personal story again, just because I think it's something where there's in many ways such a simplistic, simple way that we can address some of this stuff, which is figuring again what we can do ourselves. So my career, but most people look at my career and they think it's the weirdest career ever because I sold shoes, I drove a forklift, I worked in a machine shop, I worked in solar tech, then medical devices, and then biometric wearables, and then nuclear programs, and back to medical, and then I was in space, and then I was in manned space, and I'm still in the space program, just something new. But I get a lot of people who ask me like, well, how could you do that? Like, it must have taken all this schooling and all this learning. And it was like, how could you do all these different jobs? And I'm not trying to be smug, but I said like, I can read. Like the internet has the breadth and depth of human knowledge on it, and it's
Mhm.
all out there, and it's all free, right? Or nominal fees only in a lot of cases. Go to your local public library. And this is an oversimplification because there's many factors in my life that were also luck and people giving me the opportunities that I had, and I had to take those opportunities. But ultimately, there's so much more that we can do to be able to handle these situations better. Like you were talking about young people today. I think you and I have talked about the future of this podcast. For example, we're really hoping that young people in many ways are given the tools not to do really good math and calculus. Those are great, but in many ways that young people are given the tools to deal with the up and down nature of life today and deal with living and how to live well. You know, like I went to a high school that did have a philosophy course in it, but many high schools don't. And, it's usually seen as, at school they should be learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. And that's great. But if you're not teaching people how to do these things, if people aren't curious and learning how to be better in these circumstances, I think they will always struggle with change. And so we as a society have to kind of figure out how to deal with that better.
Very true. Very true. And maybe resilience, which is like a section of all the military services in the U.S.
Yeah.
Maybe resilience should be taught throughout school. You
Yeah.
know, one I think they should bring. But one of the first essays I wrote on Stoicism was "Case for a Philosopher King," which was
I
really
remember
just
that
a way
article.
of saying, we got to bring back the whole idea of ethics into rearing kids again. And I talked to my dad and his generation. He was like grew up during the Great Depression and stuff. But like the education they had was just astounding. And he was like a poor Irish kid from the Irish section of Detroit, believe it or not. Irish American kid. And part of it is a Jesuit education, which I would tout as exceptional. But they learned, Greek philosophy, science, ethics.
Yeah.
Um, I do realize that there's so many things that kids need to learn that you have to drop some of it. But at the core of society is its ethical stance,
Yeah.
and that shouldn't go away. And part of ethics, I think, and just is this idea we're talking about is resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience in the right way. So not to lash out at the world and blame it all on it, not to take shortcuts because you don't think you can deal with life's challenges. It's to do it in an ethical way. I think that should be part of every education.
Yeah.
Um, they're going to shift a lot. I mean, for all the kids that weren't great at math, um, that's going to change, man, because people like we've advanced so far that um,
Yeah.
you know it's going to change the way we do education. But things that I think have to stay consistent is ethics and teaching people life skills, and life skills includes resilience.
Yeah.
And hopefully that is something that we all embrace for our own kids. The other part of resilience, I would say, is, and this came up in a conversation uh, last week, and everybody knows this because you can see the memes and everything. Like when I grew up, and before me for sure, parents, they kind of joke that they they were harder on their kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true, but the point being is, like, if an adult came to you when I was growing up, came to you as a parent and said your
Yeah.
kid was screwing up, disrespectful, whatever. There was a time when your parent immediately punished you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just, okay, my kid's being a jerk. I'm going to take.
Yep.
Nowadays, it's, I dare you say anything about my kid. It must have been you. It's like immediately, like a helicopter parent or whatever the term is, where your kid can do no wrong, and they all need to get trophies, and they all need to get A's, and they shouldn't be required to do push-ups because they're not very good at doing push-ups. So let's just scrap the PT test and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like that is the opposite of setting your kid up for resilience,
Yeah.
because you can manipulate it. You can, you know, threaten lawsuits or whatever you do, get the
Yeah.
teacher fired up until the person's done with school and goes out in the real world, and then is actually told they're not that smart, they're not that strong, and they're kind of a jerk, and they
Yeah.
expect to, you know what I mean? That's you're not setting your kids up. So the parents that think that's the way a parent should be, I would
Right.
advocate that it's actually the opposite. You have to be honest. You should stick up for your kid when he's right or she's right,
Yeah. For
but you
sure.
got to be also the one that said, no, you were rude to that girl. That's not how we roll in this house. And
Yeah.
you're going to walk down the street, knock on the door, and apologize.
Yeah.
Period. And then you're not going to do it again. Because if you do it
Yeah.
again, you're going to get more punished. And then you're going to apologize to her publicly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I do know what you
you
mean.
are responsible for your kid, and you just advocating for him as if you're some kind of trial lawyer isn't the way to do it, is what I
Yeah.
would say. And a lot of parents think that's their role. I am simply going to defend my kid, period. And then they end up with a jerk and they wonder how it happened.
Yeah, and I think we end up in a situation nowadays so much where, people think they can always get whatever they want, right? But the thing is
That
that
comes from that.
change would say?
It comes from that.
Yeah,
When
it
their
does come
parents
from
tell
that.
them they should get whatever they want, whenever they want.
Yeah. No, for sure. And the fact is that like I still think that relates to the difficulties with change that so many people face, right? Like I got asked one time to speak at a Maker Festival event about kids because I had lectured at the University of Toronto earlier that year and stuff like that. And I ended up saying, one of the best things your kids can ever hear is no, right? Because not because they shouldn't be allowed to dream and hope and imagine these amazing futures and
Of
everything, but
course.
more so that they should learn that not everything happens the way you want it to happen. Not everything will happen that way. And I mean, very famously, right? And Steve Magnus, who wrote a book called Do Hard Things, talks about this. Like the runners, for example, and I know you're a runner, Mick. The runners who have bad races but still win gold after like just chugging it across the line, right? Those are the people who imagine. In many cases, those people will always tell you the story is I started the race, felt really good, and then my leg cramped, and then I couldn't hold this pace. And what those people do is they say, okay, this isn't what I wanted to have happen. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't everything I thought it would be, but this is going to be hard, but I can handle hard.
Mm-hmm.
I can figure that out. And then they, chug it across the line and finish, right? And I mean, even 6-time gold medalist at this past Olympics, Johannes Kleibo, had that happen where he was in a local the first race after the Olympics. He was like, man, that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be because you come off the Olympics with 6 gold, right? I think being like in peak shape.
Right.
But he talked about a little bit about like, I realized like you just got to knuckle down, just keep, stay within the pack and then come out later. And I think people are struggling with this today because of what you're talking about. Now, I would agree too. We have an obligation to teach this stuff to people as well. Humans are not born understanding ethics, not born understanding philosophy. And I don't mean they need to understand all the philosophers. I mean understanding the idea of thinking about how to live. And I think we have to do that because it's useful. Like I hear a meme, and I should say, I'm going to say the meme, but I do think trigonometry is extremely useful. But the meme had said something like, I'm glad I learned trigonometry in high school. It really helps me during trigonometry season every year. And right. But at the same time, right, I think the thing is we, and in Ontario especially, we're going through this huge curriculum upheaval, which is just kind of crazy. But we have to choose as a society what we think are the important things. And if we value math over learning how to live well, I think that says a lot about us, right? Versus, um, places that talk about feelings, that talk about challenges, that talk about change, as it comes up. And that's why we do this practice. So, Mick, you have any closing thoughts for us today? We should probably wrap up there.
Be the Alex out there. Be the guy that or gal that is honest with yourself, and you'll, I think, soon find that is the best way forward. If you're going to get told no, if your parents don't do it, don't worry, your boss will, or other people in life.
Yeah.
If you're going to succeed, then chances are you're going to fail. People who don't fail generally don't push themselves. It's easy not to push yourself and therefore never fail, but never really, really succeed. I mean, most Olympic athletes will say that.
Yeah.
Certainly most boxers and most world leaders that have really left their mark on the world. If you look back, you can ChatGPT this. Like, look at a list of world leaders that have failed pretty substantially in their careers, but somehow overcame it. It's most of the world leaders that you would admire, actually.
Sure.
So that's what I'd say. Be the Alex. Be the guy that understands that failure happens, and what you do from it is what really matters.
Yeah, totally agree. I think my closing thought for today will be that it's our opinions about things that always make us feel good or bad. I'm paraphrasing, I think, Epictetus at this point. So when things happen to you, remember that you have a choice. Take a step forward, however you think is right from that choice. But I liked what I said last week, so I hope everyone treats everybody absolutely wonderfully in their lives. And Mick and I will sign off today. We'd love to hear from you. Pub and Porch, info@pubandporch.com is our email address. Leave a comment. Give us what you got. We'd love to hear from you all. Change is an interesting topic. Many people have wonderful stories about that, and we'd love to hear them in the community. So, cheers, Mick. See you on the next one.
Sláinte. Thank you for listening to the Pub and Porch podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the podcast or its host, head over to pubandporch.com, and you can listen to all our episodes on Spotify, Apple, or whichever platform you prefer. And if you'd like to help out with the podcast, you can find us on Patreon. Drop us an email if you have a comment on any past episode, you have a suggestion for future episodes, or you have an essay on an important topic for Stoicism. Send it to us, and then we can be reached at info@pubandporch.com. Today's music was provided by bensound.com. Until next time, Pub and Porch out.